The major component of a relationship of faculty to a student is the desk-side critique, where you sit down with the student explains where they are in the process, a drawing or a model, and you make comments. And it's a very fascinating process because you're very quickly understanding what the student is trying to do, and you have to select what criticism you can give that's going to be helpful for the next step. It happens very quickly. But it's an essential one-on-one process between myself and the students, guiding the work through the semester. Perhaps during the semester there are hundreds of desk-side crits that take place. Often, if there's in this class there's 13 people, I will try to see 13 people in one afternoon, and sometimes once or twice a week. So by the end of the semester, the student has received maybe 20, 25 desk-side crits. So today you're seeing one of those.
So last time I talked with you, I had this model in that spot. And I have the idea of creating a sort of wall, but making penetrations within it. And what I started to do was go from a very sort of square form or orthogonal form to creating more nicer shapes, and just creating a stepping here, for example. We also discussed the idea of an alleyway here, and the trees that are on the site right now are the ones that I put up sort of to figure out whether I want to cut down a tree or not, or how I can work with the trees. And you know me pretty well by now, and you know that I don't want to cut down trees.
No, nor should you.
So I'm working to preserve them, and in this case I cut into it a little bit, and instead of having an alleyway, I decided that I'd have a secret garden sort of in the back here, and then create a balcony in there. So so that there'd be a sort of balcony here from the second floor, and out here would be a secret garden sort of thing. And this idea of having a sort of a arcade would be present here as well.
Would be here also.
Here too.
Okay.
And here as well. And on one of my plans, let's see. I was working with that sort of idea and seeing how it can just flow through the space, maybe. And so one of the ideas of this model here, this shape suggested to me, was the idea of a footbridge just crossing that. And since I'm working with elderly, I think it would be very nice to have a footbridge here so that they won't have to go all the way down and then get another elevator or take another ramp up. They can just cut across here. And since I'm thinking of having a screen here or a sort of theater space out here for outdoors, I could have people lining up here and looking in there, or having screenings of films and things like that. I could have people, this would be another sort of seating area, and we could have a speaker system or something fixed up there. So right now I feel sort of set on how I'm doing this. Something actually, a minor detail that was suggested to me simply from the shapes that I had was sort of having a lower window here. And since this is going to be my more private space, private building versus the and quieter building versus a louder sort of more social space here, I like the idea of having those windows be right at the very bottom in that level.
Which means that this is a two-story space?
That would be one story.
But lights going down in below.
Yeah.
So inside this, is there space?
There will be, yeah. I imagine that being either the where the infants would be in my daycare center, or just a place where people can go and sleep, children, elderly, and sleep. And I don't know, it's just a minor touch, but just the shape that I had from that cardboard, because they didn't match, I just put it in, and I realized that it suggested something to me there.
But the point is there'd be a slot of light behind that, or you're just getting light into this level.
Yeah,
Okay.
the only light will be coming,
I
natural
see.
light will be
I
coming
see.
in from the floor, sort of.
Okay.
That was a minor detail.
Okay.
But in terms of, I don't know, penetrating sort of this space, I decided I would probably include this tree into the actual building, having people from the street level, this being North Street, well, Par Rear's sort of the tourists going that way. This, I like the way that taking this out a little bit, invited people in here and sort of showed them the way of how to enter this building, and including the tree. And here I have the same sort of concept that I could include the trees. Before Tuesday, I hadn't put the trees in, and I just sort of plunked all my objects here. But once that I put the trees, I started thinking, well, maybe I could do something like that. And I realized that I would just lose the whole idea I had of relating to the street and having that right angle right there. So I see that the only solution for those trees would be to just include them in the building. Create one of my ideas is to create a patio area. On that one, that would be a patio area for eating and things like that. And you mentioned to me creating a secret garden here on the left, and the entrance would be somehow having to do with entering through here and going through the building. And looking at these two trees, it just was a gateway sort of to enter into this space. So I'm imagining that that they will create a sort of gateway to enter in here, where there'll be a playground, some swing sets, tables for, I don't know, 2 elderly gentlemen to play chess. Just these images I have in my head right now, and I just imagine bushes right now separating that space, so that people walking by know it's there, and then question, how do I get in there, and realize that they actually have the right to go in there because this is a public space. So those are my basic ideas right now.
If I'm coming down the street for the first time, do you see me coming into this space or into here as the entrance?
Well, I think this would be more prominent, and I think more people will enter into here at first, and then find out what this is. This is going to be the central space to my design. And yes, I think that I had to stick the wall out a little bit here because there had to be a sort of way to invite people into this building as well, even though it's my quieter building for study, for sleeping and taking care of infants. Whereas here's the dining and the teaching kids more creative arts, things like that. So I am hoping people will enter here, but I do see that is prominent there, and that maybe I should suppress that a little.
All right, I got it. First of all, the evolution from this to this is very successful because I think you're starting to develop an architecture language in this, which needs obviously more work, but it's nevertheless, it's taking the rough form into something that's more precise, and I think it's good. The notion of a ramp that moves through this and across and over, which is a new idea since before, is very powerful. Just so you know, the normal ramp is 1 to 12, and this is probably not that. But that's okay. That's a handicap. That's not necessarily. Okay. But the notion of the ramp being the thing that moves me through this, at least to a certain extent, I think is a very powerful notion. Some comments. The idea that this is still covered and light's coming into this, I think is powerful. But I'm not so sure it's necessary to continue it in the same way. For instance, here it could be outside, this walkway, or slightly covered, but not necessarily heated. So you'd have, whereas this one might be a heated space. So I could come into a heated building, and then I'm covered, and I come out, and maybe I go back into it. as opposed to it completely being
Yeah.
covered as you show it here.
And here I showed it in section 2. So
Right.
my idea, yeah.
Well, it could be that you need, first of all, you need this continuity, which I think is very powerful, of the path through, or the journey through the building, to hold together the pieces. So that's very positive. Then the question is the magnitude of it, and it could be that this is overboard just a little bit, and you could draw back on it. At the same time, I think you very ingeniously have figured out a way of meeting this to this by making this little place for the tree, which I think is terrific, and producing the little secret garden. But where I don't think it works is where you think of this as being covered.
Okay.
I think the building somewhere in here stops and you go outside into this space.
Okay.
And this guy, this little space, is to the street. This one is to the building.
Okay.
So maybe in there's a bench or two so I can sit on it. Or in fact, all along this might be benches as a public place. This is given over to the street.
Yeah.
The other is given over to the building.
Okay.
So you move in. Now, that brings me to and that's why I asked you the question. You have a very subtle but important problem of architecture, and that is that you do have two entrances, really. There's this, which is very major, and there's this that's important for you, but is not as major, probably, as this. That would say for me that because there's a directionality here that you're working with, that you need to make some forms. Can I do something with this?
Please.
You need to do something with this, not that necessarily, but something like that, that directs me into this space a little bit more forceful.
Okay.
Even to the point where, in the most extreme, can I have a piece of some toys? Yeah. This is extreme, but even to the point, I don't mean it like this, even to the point where it says I come to this point and I'm directed slipping into the space here.
Okay.
At the same time, I can go in here, but this is probably the one that I think I'm going to go into if I don't know the building. So I think you need to pronounce that more. Okay. And I'm going to be leading up to something here because the directionality of this could be exploited more than what you've done, because there is this to work with, just as you've been working with that. However, at the same time that I say that, it seems to me that coming into this space with this wonderful ramp, which is a 2-story or a 3-story space, I can imagine light slipping down alongside of it, is also important, and even to the point where this ramp might have just slightly turned to pick me up. So I come in when I know the building, or come out, by the way. It's not only going in, it's coming out. So I come in or I go out through this ramp that is a clear kind of definition. I talked to you every day about paths and places. This is the clear journey of a path, moving through your environment and coming down into something. So all I'm saying is watch out here that you don't overdo it. You need to get us in, but you need to get us in there even more.
Okay.
And you're not there yet, in the sense that you haven't worked over there yet, so it probably will happen. Incidentally, I think it's incredibly sensitive of you to try to save the trees, and that's a real plus, and not always very easy. Now, the form that you're working with in here, the forms, is terrific, except the next go-around, you may find that this is not all glass. And for the kids, this is a daycare up here, this may be a playground for them. And therefore I could move out into that space from there.
Okay.
And maybe it's, so it doesn't mean you don't do this. It may mean that at this corner, the corner is a good place, I go out into a roof garden here for the kids, otherwise they don't have a place to play, or they might play down there. But they could still have a place here as long as it's protected, obviously. But it's a kid little hangout, or a little secret place, which is kind of neat, up in the sky, if I were a kid. And you can look out and watch people and so on.
Parties outside.
So there's a lot of privacy. And as we said before, as you go up, things are more private. So this makes this daycare for the kids very private, and almost like, if you wish, they are viewers of the street. They watch people go back and forth. Now let's move over to here because I think that's important.
My problem area.
Well, it's not yet your problem area, but it's your problem area because you haven't done it. But I think there's a major piece here, if I'm reading this right. This is still that wall, right?
Yes.
And the tree is here, right? And the other tree is in here. And there's another tree back here, right?
Yeah. And then there's a little one.
Another little tree? Okay, good. And then there's a wall back in here. Two things that you might consider. You have the wall that we talked about, and then the opening I'm going through, and we talked about all this. And I'm going under, and I mentioned that we need to have some kind of a way of getting us, there's a tree in here, by the way, somewhere, into this space. All that's fine. And I'm above it, then is this passageway that's coming to a point, and then either by ramp in the same way it comes down into this, and it would be interesting if there's a way you could make that ramp then part of seats, which then relates to your amphitheater, which is here, if you can do that. So then I have a continuous experience coming down. If you can't make that happen, then maybe this ramp comes along across, and there's some major kind of spiral stairs like the one over the Memorial Starl Drive that gets me down and out into this space. Because this is really the center of the life for you and outside. This is inside. But the point that I wanted to make is that the building is, let me just move this slightly, is here. And you have this space that we talked about before. It seems to me still that since there's a tremendous notion here that there's a wall of different kinds that are coming along the street, that we still might see something here that is not obviously nearly as opaque as this, maybe much lower, but is collected to this in some way, so that the corner is not turned drastically. Maybe this is low, maybe this is translucent, I can see through. And then this becomes, which is what I think you want, something of a secret garden to hang out in, which is not necessarily connected to this, or could be. Now, here comes the piece that I think could be interesting. If these guys, these trees, are here, then maybe this building does this, and this part is outside. So that when I'm in this space, I'm letting the trees to be outside, and I'm also providing a way of getting into this building, or out.
From the street, or this would still be cut off?
No, this would still be here, but all I'm saying is that in order to keep that tree, which you want to do, maybe it's part of this space, and it's also a way of making the transition as another entrance or exit from this building into this space. As opposed to, which is what you were suggesting, which was to corral it, or build something around it, basically, and then hope that it's going to be, it's not going to live inside, by the way. It has to be outside somehow. You could make a courtyard out of it, but I think you got a bum pencil here. I think the courtyard is too close to the other courtyard to make any sense. So instead of a courtyard here and a courtyard here, it might be combined. Now, in the best world, maybe this tree, if you're more accurate, the two trees, so that this is more of a tiny triangular chunk out of this, as opposed to the one I just drew. But I don't know, we have to see what it is. And then you still have that. So now I have this kind of relationship from this. And by the way, you said there'd be a hedge here, so now I'm saying there's some kind of translucent wall in here. I can see through, I can see people. They're playing chess, etc. But maybe there's something else in here. There's water, I don't know what, that acts as the focus of this. But because the trees are marching along, I'm putting another one here, this space is marching into this one. And then I'm into that. And by the way, even better, if I could figure out a way that I can, at this point, see right through this building and out into the amphitheater. So then I get a continuous experience between the hardness, I'll say for the moment, of the amphitheater to the inside, to a transition into this very quiet garden, which might have water. I guess we talked about that before. So there's different experiences along the way. But they're all connected. There's two connections that you got. One is the screen, we'll call it, along the street. And the other one is your ingenious ramp that was moving through, down and around into this. Now, tell me again, is this, I've forgotten, is this guy 2 stories building?
It'll be 2 or 3, I'm not sure yet.
Uh-huh.
I was envisioning 3 because I was seeing, again, this
Yeah.
sort of stepping.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah.
mimic that here, sort of an echo of it, and also mimic sort of the as a stadium, as an amphitheater. But I'm until I sort of tackle that,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I was envisioning 3 stories. I talked to you last time about hierarchy, and how
Yeah.
I was worried that I was missing out on the hierarchy if the 2 buildings are the same sort of height. So I might lose that, but maybe if I can emphasize this as being the central space, then that would be my hierarchy, and I won't need to.
But what we talked about before too is that the roofs, if it's a 2nd-story building, say, which is going to interfere with this thing coming across, so this thing may slip behind it, could be seats for the amphitheater, and then there's seats down here also for the amphitheater. So that the side of this building, although it's got transparency moving into the space, but the side of that building is actually moving up from the landscape, making a kind of a bowl shape. And I think that's very powerful because you're putting an incredible amount of energy or activity on this. In other words, when we're all done, this is probably the place where you come to have an event, obviously, but also kind of a meeting place. This is a place where, and the kids might play in here and run around. This is probably the quiet place where they, as you said, play checkers or whatever. And it's wonderful. And in fact, maybe this even becomes more green in relationship to this.
I'm worried somewhat of the sunlight, since most of the sunlight would be coming in through here.
Right.
I'm also thinking of stepping it down towards this building so that maybe the sunlight could go right in that corner and enter into this space.
Well, I'd be careful. I'll tell you why. You're defining this space, and it does have 2 good definitions. This, by having the wall up at that point, there's a slippage there, which is fine, makes it more contained. If you start stepping it down, you may start to lose some of that containment.
Okay.
And this is different kind of a space than this. I don't think this is, here, this backyard space, little secret garden, is fine. That slips out. I'm not so sure that this one wants to slip out as much. But I would invite you to take the model and a Luxo lamp or any light and follow the sun. Yeah, just one, that's perfect. That's a sun. And follow the sun and see what it does, because the next step would be to consider if the sun, for instance, is coming over the building, then on this side of the, where am I? No, that's got it. The event building, there might be panels that can divert the light down into here. Or if the sun is coming this way, there might be panels that on the side of the building that's vertical that can divert, bounce the light down. We talked about. I doubt you're going to get much sun down into here, period, but you are going to probably get sun up above. So these panels, or even, so these panels maybe are up here that are catching the sun and bringing it down. So there's another, so there's a whole nother kind of design notion here that we haven't talked about. All this is, let's assume it's all done. Then there may be up around this building, which is, there's going to be a screen on this, right? But even above that, there might be panels that are bouncing light all the way around at a certain height, which is another form of architecture, sky form actually. And I'm catching the sun bouncing light down into what I think is your major place, this one. Not here. This is cool, green, shady, quiet. This is alive, light, hot, sunny, just the opposite.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and of course we should be using the sun as much as we can, beyond that, this is an architectural, another architectural continuity. So it's not only bouncing the sun, but it's something else.
I like the way that the site, or the way that this is laid out right now is sort of hugging itself. Like, this is quiet, here's quiet, and then there's sort of the busy activities for the sun, and it feels like it's getting there. It's containing a little bit better. So.
I think the organization is just right. The way you have filled it. I think the architectural language that you're starting to develop is the beginning. I would move on now quickly to here.
Yep.
And I happen to know from experience that this ramp is not going to be as nice as you think. It's going to take a little working to make it work. But it's a powerful notion that the ramp is an organizer.